Yarr! Welcome everyone to another scandalous episode of the S.O.A.P, something we pirates never use. I am your host, Mike the Pirate, and I'm joined by the Sea Devil, Dan.
Yarr!
And the Mistress of the Seas, Delphine.
Ahoy!
This episode, me and me fellow pirates are talking Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Dan, can you tell us what it is?
Sure can. Not sure how many people are still listening after that, but Black Flag, essentially it's an action-adventure video game. So it's done by Ubisoft, who have done all of them. It's the sixth major installment in the Assassin's Creed series, even though it actually sits at about number 4. Assassin's Creed 2 obviously had a couple of titles. Its historical time frame precedes that of Assassin's Creed 3, so we've actually gone back a bit in time. Though the modern day sequences are actually after 3, so a little bit of jumping back and forward in time. It came out on the PlayStation 3, the Xbox 360, the Wii U back in October 2013, so it is getting a little bit old now. But it did also then switch over to the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and onto PC about a month later. So it was a very unique period at that time to have it on both the older and current generations. Now, what's important about that one is that it's actually now being released on the Nintendo Switch as part of the Assassin's Creed The Rebel Collection, which also has Assassin's Creed Rogue. And that's coming out this December at this point, assuming there's no delays or anything like that. I'm not sure how these port overs get delayed so much. I saw The Witcher 3 also get delayed, but that should be out for Switch owners so they can finally catch up if they haven't already.
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of it. How do you guys feel about it? How about we start with you, Delphine, you landlubber?
I really enjoyed the game. I wasn't too sure about the pirate ship mechanics when I first started.
You parrot!
Yeah, no, it was a bit of a shame that I didn't love that. The game mechanics and the story was really good. Mechanics as far as Assassin's Creed is very much what you'd be, looking forward to in terms of playing a game. I was really, really impressed with the storyline. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about that, but it was much, much deeper than what I expected in terms of getting to know some characters and understanding what's going on and all that. So that was really cool. The ship battles, the first couple of times that I did that, I really hated it. And I figured I'm just never gonna like that, and I'm never, going to be able to get it. And it took a little while, and eventually I did get it. And
now you're a true pirate, eh?
To doing the legendary ships and all that. So turned out much better than initially expected.
Do you want to talk about what you thought of the game as a not pirate, or?
Oh, okay. Well, I suppose so. I enjoyed it. It is one of the only Assassin's Creed games that I will play regularly because I quite despise Assassin's Creed 2. For some reason, I can't get past the first level. Yarr! In Assassin's Creed 2. Okay, now Assassin's Creed.
That's unfortunate.
Assassin's Creed 2 is the Italian one, mate.
That's true.
It's
wrong character.
It's a pain in the asshole, okay?
And so I kind of swore off Assassin's Creed, and you were constantly saying to me, "Oh, Dan, Mike, can you please play this game?" And in Captain Kirk, I was like, no, get fucked. No. I don't like it. It's shit. I don't like it. It pissed me off. And then you're like, Black Flag. And I was like,
Yarr, me pirate life for me.
And yes, I was instantly hooked because it was like,
pirate ships, me cannons. Man the port blast, yarr to the starboard. Land a-ho, Captain.
And I loved it. It's great. I still play it, and you keep wanting me to do the multiplayer stuff, but I'm like, nah, storyline for me. So
yeah, the ship mechanic is definitely a selling point as to why that's so good. Assassin's Creed 3 is where that got introduced, and it was one of the few things about Assassin's Creed 3 that I actually enjoyed. Its plot twist was really well done, but made everything around the game just absolutely terrible. So finding the ship mechanic in 3, obviously just it really stood out as something that was decent in a game that I found not so decent, which I think must have resonated amongst a lot of people in the fact that they changed their entire way they went about the Assassin's Creed games to make Black Flag. Black Flag is by far my favorite out of all of them, but it's also the least Assassin's Creed game that I would say they've ever made. Having not played Origins or Odyssey yet, it's on my list to play, but like I'm playing Syndicate at the moment, and if I was to compare Syndicate to Black Flag, like there's no comparison. Black Flag is 1,000 times better. But I'd oddly say that Syndicate, whilst other people tell me how great Syndicate is, I find that to be quite falling short of the mark, and I would suggest also part of the reason why they had to take a break from it. But there's so many aspects of Black Flag that they did well. Delphine touched on the storyline, and as someone who enjoys the pirate era, watching shows like Black Sails, things like that, it's really good to see those characters come across into this storyline, and seeing characters like Blackbeard is always any pirate lover is gonna love just seeing Blackbeard.
Arr, me mate's Blackbeard. Arr.
You know, like Edward Teach is such a historical figure that there's so many good things that they can draw from that, even if they're not being historical. So personally, Black Flag, without a doubt, is the one out of all the Assassin's Creed that you have to play, but also the least representative of Assassin's Creed games.
Was it the first game they introduced the multiplayer mode?
No, 3, I believe, had it off the top of my head, but in the remaster, so the one that you can get, say, with the Odyssey season pass, they took the multiplayer out and replaced it with the DLC for it.
Okay. Do you want to comment on whether you enjoyed the multiplayer mode? Because I think it's a very different feel from the main story of the game. And while I really enjoyed the main story and the solo play, I felt the multiplayer was interesting but a bit of a mess.
Yeah, I suppose it's a good point now to talk about that. The multiplayer is a very interesting thing in Assassin's Creed. The game itself, like where Call of Duty kind of excels in running around shooting people and therefore shooting other people is naturally good to that genre, Assassin's Creed is a game that I would suggest is very the opposite. Walking around, stealthing, finding targets. It doesn't work so well in multiplayer. And that's not to say that the multiplayer is bad. I mean, if you look at Black Flag at its current state compared to where it originally released, the multiplayer is mostly dead. You'll find a couple of people playing one of the modes competitively, and then you've got the Wolfpack mode, which you can do solo or with a group of up to 4 peoples in the group. I have very mixed feelings about it. I don't enjoy the multiplayer at all. The Wolfpack mode was the closest I found to them getting something done right, and that was because it had a more cooperative side, but it very quickly becomes bland. It's a grind fest rather than a fun activity to do. The rest of the multiplayer modes, I guess, would be better, but again, it doesn't really fit the nature of why you would buy that kind of game, which is why I think when they went to Unity, which we already covered on a previous podcast, the co-op mechanics of Unity were so much better for a multiplayer aspect. The only issue is, again, playing it after the game's dead, you can't find those people. And that's where they need to be able to think futuristically and have co-op modes where you can have either AI or you can actually naturally do those modes solo. But yeah, in terms of the multiplayer side of it, it's a nice idea that they're probably pushed into doing that really just doesn't hit the mark. What do you think, Mike?
About the multiplayer?
Yar.
I didn't mind it. I kind of hoped I could just kill anybody, but no.
No, I had to not kill civilians, which you all said, stop killing civilians. I mean, it's not my fault they're in the fucking way. So, yeah, I didn't mind it. You got me to play a few games, and everyone was, like, much better than I was. So I was more or less the cannon fodder. I can hold a point, more or less. And I didn't mind it. I probably should play a bit more of it, but probably won't.
What did you think of the wolf pack mode that we were doing, the cooperative side of it, where we had to hunt down specific targets, and then you would have the ones that were detecting you. You had the 50-50 ones that were blending in, the synchronized sequences, that kind of thing. What did you think of all of that?
Well, it was not too bad. I kind of liked it that you had to kind of find your target and get close to them, and then a naughty sea hag named Delphine stole my stuff. It's my kill. So yes, you'd have those problems where you do like a lock-on thing, but then someone else could do a lock-on thing or whatever, and then half the time people will be coming up to them like they're running, and then, oh shit, gotta stop. Oh, I've just given us away. And then, like, I really liked the synchronized section where you'd all be working together, and you go, right, where's your target? Pick your target, and then attack, and then you'd have a cutscene. That was cool. I like that.
Yeah, that looked very good. I think that I understand what they were trying to do with the multiplayer. I also think that Wolfpack in the end is probably the mode that works best. The other ones, I really get where they were going to, but it's a little bit clumsy in terms of, people just hiding from you and all that sort of stuff. So playing against AI in Wolfpack, I felt is probably the better way. I, however, felt it wasn't always like super consistent in like some mobs, would detect you like straight away when you're not moving, and others you'd literally jump in the middle of them and never see you. And I'm not talking about, between the different types of enemies, which obviously some were going to notice you more than others. The other ones were these that, you didn't know which one was which. And that's something that I found really frustrating. I could not, even using some of the skills and so on, always crack like which one is which. And when you're competing against time, I felt that was a little bit annoying when you'd waste so much time, waiting to get points, and then they just hit you and walk away. And so I felt that was a little bit of a letdown in that particular mode. But other than that, I thought it was fun. The idea that you had to go to such a high level in multiplayer for the Platinum Trophy, though, and the fact that Wolfpack is pretty much the way to go now to get there. By the end, I think we would all like kind of not love that mode, because you just have to do so many games.
One thing I should probably mention is that the game, when we talk about how much we liked everything, it got very positive reviews. It was actually one of the best-selling games of 2013. It had more than like 11 million copies shipped in that. So when people talk about it, though, they talk about the single player. The multiplayer is not the side that they really talk about. Critics were praising the open world gameplay, the side quests and how many there were. Graphics at the time were actually really, really good. And obviously the improved naval combat over number 3. The pirate theme and the storyline were actually really well received by critics as well, which again, Delphine was mentioning how in depth she found it in that. The modern day story though is where that game's a bit, it's a bit hit and miss. The original 3 were very heavy on what happens outside the Animus for it. This one took it away and just turned it into a cheap, you now play a game and that's why you're going back in time and all that kind of stuff. It's always been one of those sides that always gets a bit criticized. And in this one in particular, I felt was the previous ones I had that because it made sense in terms of storyline overall. This one just threw it in as a cheap and nasty that really kind of slowed the storyline down. And then they added all those mini hacking games as well with it to just really kind of weigh it down. Which, if they were optional or that's all fine and fun, but making those things compulsory, and Delphine talks about trophies, you had to do X amount of them and that kind of stuff for the trophies. But even without it, the storyline mandatory ones just weren't that fun. It's not an aspect of Assassin's Creed that's been done very well. So whilst the single player was really good in terms of pirates and all that, the modern day stuff is just absolutely shite in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. It's really slow. My main thing was that it's just so slow. You're just walking around that, office building, and it's really odd. I didn't mind the storyline itself of the modern day. I thought that was kind of cool. But it was just so slow. And as much as I did enjoy some of these mini hacking games, there was one that I really didn't like. And when I had to do some of the harder levels with that little ball that you had to get to travel across from one side to the other side of the screen, that really annoyed me, and I definitely did feel like, oh, why do I have to do that sort of stuff? So that wasn't a nice feeling, but I didn't mind them. They weren't super difficult. It was just really slow.
Yeah, speaking of the story, Dan, why don't you walk along the story plank?
It follows the notorious Welsh pirate Edward Kenway as you're running around plundering the seas. Now, he's related to the characters from Assassin's Creed 3, so we won't go too much into them, but Haytham Kenway and his son essentially are descendants of Edward, and you'll even find references to him in Unity and Syndicate, I think you'll find. So he stays as a main reference later on, which again attests to how well that storyline was done. Now, during this, obviously, we've got the Assassins and the Templar conflict back there. They're all fighting over the artifact from that ancient race that we learned about in the first 3 games. The attempted establishment of a Republic of Pirates utopia is a significant plot element, which is obviously where most pirate stories actually go in that time period. You see Nassau, where the pirates all seem to live, as they try and build their own free from England kind of ruling. So it spans the West Indies. That's where most of this all takes part, with Havana, Nassau, and Kingston. And there's numerous islands. I think there's something like 50 different locations of that other than the main ones. You get sunken ships, you get forts to capture. There's a lot in there. They even go into the wildlife where you have the option of harpooning sea animals and hunting land animals. Like, they were pretty in-depth about this setting and what was available at the time. So naval exploration is a major part of this, which is very unique to the Assassin's Creed games. Normally you're running around on foot with the odd bit of sailing here or there, whereas this one, it really comes to the main front. Everything you do to get anywhere is going to be sailing the Jackdaw, which is Edward's ship. It's a brig that he's captured from the Spanish fleet, and you get to upgrade it and customize it and really make it a little bit of your own. The storyline, Edward is your typical person going into that pirate life. They start out somewhere, bad shit happens, their ship gets destroyed, and they need to make a new life for them, and they all just seem to become pirates. It happened in Black Sails as well, with John Silver being that character who just gets his ship fucked over, and then all of a sudden the pirates come and he's like, oh, I guess I'll just join you. I found like Edward's a little bit the same. His ship gets destroyed, runs into an assassin, steals his shit, decides, oh, I'll just be a pirate, you know? I mean, Delphine, what stuck out for you with the storyline?
Look, I was expecting, some sort of lighter-hearted pirate stuff. I was really surprised about some of the characters that he encounters, and I had very little idea. Like, I expected to see Blackbeard in it, but I didn't expect to see some of the other characters, which, are well known for anyone who likes pirate area, such as, Hornigold, Mary Read, Anne Bonny, Jack Rackham, Charles Vane. So all these names, you get to see a version in the game. But for me, it was really, there is the story and why over time he's chasing things and becoming an assassin along the fact that he wants to become a better pirate. It was much deeper in, his sort of purpose in life, I suppose, than what I expected. So I was really impressed with the story, because I expected, to be on a ship and go and plunder and find myself some booty. But other than that, I didn't really expect, to get into the characters and while some of them, that die, and feel sorry for them and actually a little sad. And so I thought it was really, really well done from a storytelling point of view.
What about you, Mike? What do you think about it?
Well, my thoughts on the storyline was a little bit generic, a little bit typical. As you said before, you can watch that on Black Sails. Oh yeah, right. No, he's going to do this, and he's going to play against each other. And then you're like, cool, I can kind of kill assassins and I can kill Templars. No, he's turned good. So as a pirate, you kind of thought, well, maybe they could have kept the whole evil enterprise going throughout the theme. But otherwise, I was happy with the storyline. More or less, I just kind of go, yeah, I'll do the storyline to get me where I want to go, and then I'll just raid and attack and hunt down ships.
And get me that booty.
I don't know. I feel like he always had a moral compass there. If you go back to the very
he was a good guy.
Original part of it, he talks with his wife and how they wanted just to make enough money so that he could survive. And he says that the whole way through is he doesn't care if he's doing right or wrong. He really doesn't give a shit if he has to murder all of England. All he cares about is that he can earn enough money so that him and his wife can retire to a nice little farm and just live like a farming life or something like that. He doesn't want the rest of it. He doesn't care about politics. He doesn't care about the assassin's way or anything like that. He's just out there to do right by his wife, which is one of the things that I felt was really missing in that storyline. You get all these letters and all these little tidbits that allude to him and leaving his wife and why he ended up in this lifestyle, but I really wanted to see more of the interaction with him and his wife. Obviously through flashbacks or things like that, I just wanted a bit more out of that relationship. And we won't spoil what happens at the end for those who are going to play it for the first time or grab it on the Switch. But, I felt like there was something missing in that side of him. It was such a big reason as to how he ended up there. And it, like I said, it held a moral compass for him going forward that I just wanted a little bit more.
Yes, he was. I felt that his story for me mirrored a little bit that of the main character from Unity, in that, when they start their journey, they are very self-interested. And they may have some, ulterior motives and so on. And that's what I like in the progression, I think, of their moral compass, is that it actually does switch from being for their own good, if you wish, to actually having a little bit of a higher purpose. And I felt like, there is a very important character in the story that I think you really see Kenway really being stirred in that direction by Jack Kidd.
So what is it I hear along the grapevine of Freedom Cry? Yar.
Freedom Cry was a pretty interesting thing. It was actually something I really enjoyed. Freedom Cry is the DLC storyline to go with the game, and it focuses on Adewale, who is your quartermaster off the top of my head. But essentially at the end of Black Flag, he sails off on his own, and we pick it up 20 years later, where he's sailing around, and it's actually to do a lot with him and freeing the slaves. Obviously, black slavery is a very prominent thing in the storyline in the area at the time. So his thing is that he wants to liberate and rescue as many slaves as possible for it, which is pretty noble in that of him, considering everything he's been through. He was quite prominent up there amongst the pirates, and he still holds that ties to his people and to the land. And so he goes back and he makes it a point that he will stop what he's doing in order to go and rescue them. So being DLC, it's not as long as any of the others, and the storyline isn't anywhere near as in-depth, but it was a really nice way to see Adewale actually on his own sailing out and being a captain, like giving him a little bit of his own just to believe in. So I actually found that Freedom Cry was a really, really cool idea that, if anything, they could flesh out that kind of thing more. And I'd love to see, we see with Assassin's Creed 2, where they did 2 extra games, I would love to see them do more games around the Black Flag era where they pick other characters to lead out, like Adewale, and that, or, just pick someone new and just introduce more. There's so much in that pirate era that, we haven't really, seen, that they could easily do more games.
And what about these scurvy dogs, this PETA criticism? Why is that happening?
Yeah, so when the game came out, PETA, who are the people for the ethical treatment of animals, did criticize Black Flag for the use of harpoons and essentially what they call glorification of whaling. So there is a mechanic in the game where when you're around sailing on your ship, you can see different sea animals that you can harpoon and kill to get some materials. So, PETA being PETA and needing to stay relevant whenever they can, essentially criticize the game, saying, this shouldn't happen, this is, glorification and so on. And I think Ubisoft did reasonably well in responding and saying, look, this was some parts of Assassin's Creed is based on history and, it is fiction, but it does depict really events during the golden era of pirates. So we're not condoning whaling or the hunting and other animals that you harpoon or hunt in the game, rather than want to make it, historically relevant. Look, the treatment of animals in video games is always something that makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable, just the same as, randomly killing a whole lot of people that you think, gosh, they might be on the other side, but they're not necessarily bad people. So I think it's going a little bit far when you, criticize fiction and a game that I didn't feel was glorifying it. It makes me feel uncomfortable because I would love to not have to do it as part of the game. Sadly, you don't have much of a choice for a lot of it, and particularly if you're going to go for trophies, there's quite a bit that you're going to have to do. But what did you guys think about these critics, and is that relevant at all?
Make them walk the plank, I say.
I don't know. For me, look, I agree that we shouldn't be randomly, promoting the killing of animals or something like that, like 100%. But when it comes to a game like this and the whole era and the reason you do it, you actually do it to get crafting materials. You're not just randomly killing them for fun. It's actually, to get resources and things like that. Like, that's a legitimate reason and something that they would have done at the time. So again, like you mentioned, Peter is one of those people that just wants to, get their name in the media just for the sake of getting their name out there. I think it really does a disservice to them. At the core of Peter, I'm sure that there is some kind of great moral stance and genuine, want to help and do better, but I often find they get in the way of themselves, and I think things like this actually do more harm to their cause than actually help it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And especially with a game like that where, it's not like it's the core of the game. If we were talking about buck hunting or whatever the games, that are purely around fishing and hunting are. And yet again, it's like, well, if you don't want people to go hunting and fishing, maybe it is better if they do it in a game only. But yeah, look, PETA has done that quite a few times. I do think that they also had cases and against Mario and Pokemon about, again, non-ethical treatment of animals and exploitation, which sadly is, a part of our world, but I think it's pushing it really far, especially for Pokemon, because they are not even real animals.
Yeah, it's the clutching at straws. And I guess, there is the argument, yeah, it's an animal, whether it's real or not, so We just don't want people to think that hurting an animal is okay, which, I guess is a fine stance. And you just got to be reasonable about what you're saying that against. And to argue that these things are actually promoting it, I think is a very far stretch.
Yar.
What do you guys think about Skull and Bones coming out? Obviously, it's been a while since Black Flag. We said, 2013 or that for it. Skull and Bones is essentially Black Flag, but not Assassin's Creed. Does that excite you?
Yar. Does it mean I get to get on a ship and sail around?
Yeah, so essentially Skull and Bones, it depends on where they're at development. I've seen it change a couple of times, but essentially they just want to take the sailing side of Black Flag out and make that the focus of the game. So, like I said, Assassin's Creed Black Flag is the least Assassin's Creed game out of all of them. And I think this is where Skull and Bones is going, is just not trying to throw it and make it part of the Assassin's Creed world, but just having it as its own pirate, kind of world.
If you had asked me at the very beginning of me starting on Black Flag, when I struggled with the very early ship battles, I would have said hell no. But having done a whole lot more of that and, upgrading the ship to the point that you just shoot at things and they all die, and then your crew is like, yeah, are you going for a swim? I had a lot.
Send them to Davy Jones's locker.
I had so much fun doing that, which I really didn't expect when I first started. I did get a little bit of, apprehension with the legendary ships, but other than that, the rest of it became much, much easier as I went through. So I'm not sure that I would want to do a whole game about it, though. If I may be really honest, what I loved about Black Flag was that for me, it really provided that balance between the ship naval battles and the other missions. So I'm not sure, but I can't say that I have looked into it or that I don't know anything about it at this point in time. So, that could be really, really cool.
So, Mike, obviously you've become a pirate at some point during this podcast.
Yeah.
One of my fondest memories of Black Flag with you is actually around the sea shanties, including the many hours on loop that you managed to keep them playing. What are your thoughts on the sea shanties, and can we maybe get a few?
Well, we'll see. I like the sea shanties, and I've even had them playing for me family, and they've all gone, oh no, dear God, no.
I can only imagine.
So I think it is a good, a classics among, the old sea shanties. One of my favourites is, what have we got? That's a good sea shanty to sing on the deck of the old Jackdaw. What do we do with a drunken sailor? It's a classic, and here we're playing it right after the ads. Let me just get me singing voice ready. Way, hey, and up she rises, way, hey, up she rises, way, hey, up she rises early in the morning. What do we do with a drunken sailor? What do we do with a drunken sailor? What do we do with a drunken sailor? Early in the morning. And it just goes on and on and on. Put the scuppers and the hose pipe on him. Put him in the scuppers with the hose pipe on him. Put him in the scuppers with the hose pipe on him early in the morning. That's just one of them.
I'm not even surprised that you love them. They stay in your head for so long.
Right.
What about Roll Boys Roll?
Roll Boys Roll. How do they sing it?
Sally Brown?
Oh, Sally Brown, she's the gal for me, boys row. Sally Brown, she's the girl for me, boys. Way, hey, Miss Sally Brown. It's down to Trinidad to see Sally Brown, boys row. Roll, down to Trinidad to see Sally. No, I don't. I liked Way Me Susiana. And here we are, a chorus track, 1, 2, 3, blah, blah, blah. We heave him up and away we go, way me Susanna. We heave him up and away we go, we're all abound the mountain. We heave him up from down below, way me Susanna. Oh, this is where the cocks do crow, we're all abound the mountain. And so on and so forth. Yay, woohoo!
I feel like if you were a real pirate, they would not let you sing with them.
Well, I need to be a lot more drunk than I am now. So, and I need.
Didn't you have a cider?
I'm having a cider, but I need my music with me, and I've got to be kind of quiet for the rest of the family, you know, because they don't like me singing with me pirate songs. I've even done it once at work, and they're like, "What the fuck are you listening to?" And I was like, "But Johnny Boker, do me Johnny Boker, do." So yes, it's quite hilarious to all you landlubbers.
I mean, you need to catch these shanties to get a few different ones.
Yeah, there are
on the ship
wily sea shanties on the roofs of the seashore.
And I remember Dan talking about it and saying, you know, you'll want to get a few, otherwise your crew is going to be singing the same thing like all the time.
I need a bit of variety on the old sea bucket.
Yeah, I found out, ended up, you know, like many games, I ended up like switching to actually the songs that I liked the most anyways. But it was good to have a little bit of variety in there. Some of these were really hard to catch, by the way, and some of them were kind of bugged where you could just get like stay in the way somewhere and they would fly into you. That was really cool.
How did you find the mechanic of actually collecting the sea shanties, Delphine?
Yeah, look, as you know, all the acrobatics and running after things and so on is not really what I enjoy. So some of them I got really easily and some of them I took a few attempts. Some of them after a few attempts I was just like, yeah, whatever. And yeah, there's a few that I got, you know, a little bit by luck where I just happened to be there and they literally flew into me. So you could go, like they would normally go a different way from where you're coming. And then every once in a while you'd arrive somewhere and you're running in their direction and they're flying into yours, which was really funny.
Yar, I be needing me treasure maps. So, you landlubbers, you dirty scallywags, how about we go get that? But seriously, tell me how I go about to get a map.
Yeah, so one of the things that I thought was interesting in the game was also the chests that were actually buried and where you needed a treasure map to get them. So initially I thought like, crap. I mean, you know, I can imagine that's part of pirate gaming and so on. But eventually I thought that it was quite cool. You had, you know, that little map tool, so it was telling you actually if you were close to a map, to a treasure chest. And I liked the little, you know, maps with the cross and how it was showing you where it was and so on. So I thought that that was quite cool as part of the game as well. There were a few sort of compulsory treasure maps if you wanted to completely upgrade your ship. So there were a few of those that were stuck in chests, either treasure maps or some that were underwater. But I thought that was a cool mechanic in the end, as long as you didn't want to get every single one, because that was a little bit redundant.
What about me island? I want me own private island. Can someone tell me how I get that?
I believe there are a few that are on auction and all that sort of stuff all the time.
eBay.com.au, I think it is.
I'm talking about in the game, you scallywag.
In the game, you do have your own hideout as a pirate. So a whole island that you take over. You get through that early in the game. I think it might be the first Templar that you kill, maybe. And you take over that island and create your own hideout there. and you have the opportunity to upgrade a whole lot of things. So, there is this very big mansion on it, which is apparently sort of where you live, but on the island itself, you can also upgrade a whole lot of things for your crew, and so create, a shop, a harbor master, and all these sort of things as well, which was kind of cool. So to get your own island, you need to play that mission, and then you need loads and loads of money. So you want to sink all these ships to get some money, and then you can upgrade and have your own island. But my favorite island in the game was Île de la Vache, which in French means the island of the cow. And surely enough, on this island, there is a cow.
I don't think a cow would have been very prominent back then, would it?
Well, especially in the middle of nowhere like that. So I thought that it was, quite interesting. And there's literally that one, there's that cow on that island.
Can you shoot the cow and eat it for lunch?
I have not tried. My version of the parrot was not eating any meat. But I remember that you can pat some of the animals, I think, in the game. And I do believe that if you try to shoot domestic animals or pets, that you get a warning that Kenway did not do that. So I've not tried, but by mistake, I think I must have tried to hit a dog or a cat or something, because I got that little warning. So I may have...
You can't fool us, Delphine.
I've not tried with the cow. No. We can talk about this. Dan is the only one shooting, innocent animals.
It was not innocent. It walked in front of my gun. It knew what it was getting into.
But no, I've not tried to shoot the cow, so, you guys can try that.
I feel like Mike is literally going to finish this episode and go straight to go hunt that cow down.
Yar, it is one of me quests I've got to do.
Île de la Vache, that's the one.
One thing we haven't talked about, and Delphine, you probably didn't get to experience it, but Black Flag actually had a companion app. Like Unity, I didn't get to experience the Unity one because it was benched well before I got to it. Black Flag, I mean, the app is still there. It's just not compatible with the latest iOS. But essentially, with your pirate ship, as you went and sailed and plundered all the other ships, you could add them to your own fleet, and you built up this fleet. You never really got to see them, but they existed inside your ship, where you can still send them off to do quests where you trade resources and things like that to get money. But what was really cool was with the app, you didn't have to be in the game to do it. You could literally send your ships off to do combat and to sail the trade routes and things like that via your mobile phone, which meant that even when you weren't playing the game, you could still be playing the game, kind of. And I thought that was a really cool mechanic. I think you did do a little bit of the fleet building inside the game, Delphine. How did you find that?
I really love that. It was disappointing when you told me that used to be an app, because that was a good way to get some money. So if you were playing the game all the time, it probably wasn't needed as much. But indeed, some of these missions were, 36 hours. So I can imagine that sometimes it would be nice, as soon as the mission is over, get a little notification on your phone and send another ship. Essentially, it sounds a little bit like Farmville, but I thought the mechanic of it, of sending ships to your fleet and getting better ships in there, sending them on missions to get resources and money and so on, I really, really enjoyed it. It became a little bit repetitive. I mean, I finished every single mission that you could do in that particular mode. But I felt that the ship battles in it became a little bit slow. So you couldn't really skip them and so on. So that was a little bit slow. But I I quite liked it. I liked, looking at the stats of your ship and whether they were going to kill the other ships and sink them, or whether you were at risk, securing the routes to send your ships on, and so on. So I thought it was a really great idea. It's just over time, it became a little bit repetitive, but I thought it was really cool.
What about the legendary ships?
Yeah, I'm happy talking about legendary ships if you want to talk about legendary ships. Yeah, we can talk about legendary ships. So there are technically five legendary ships in the game. They are at the four corners of your map. One legendary ship encounter is actually two ships. That was probably the most difficult battle. And so you had to defeat the legendary ships to get a lot of money, and also if you wanted to get a trophy. The sort of easiest ship wasn't too difficult. It was essentially, a big man of war that you had to sink. So the initial two weren't too bad. I found that the two ships that you had to do were reasonably difficult. That would sandwich you and shoot at you. That was not particularly pleasant. So that one, I think, took me about, I think I got it on the 5th attempt. And then the last ship, which is called El something.
El Dorado.
No, Impudito. I won't remember. Anyways, that one was quite cool. It would ram you. It would ram the ship and do quite massive damage. So, you had to avoid that and actually stay reasonably close to the ship and to prevent it from running into you. So I thought that they were cool because by the time you completely upgrade the jackdaw, and when you're, towards the end of the game and you may have done all the upgrades, there are very few ships in the seas that really are a little bit of a worry. The man of war level maybe 60, I think, might be the only ones when there's a lot of other ships around that, would even sort of make you think, I have to be a little bit strategic about what I'm doing here, because eventually you have such power with the ship that you can be like me and just go like, yeah, whatever, I'm just going to shoot at things and they're going to die. So I felt that the legendary ships were quite cool in that it actually forced you towards the, when you're fighting them, to really think about the strategies that they're employing against you and how you might avoid mortar or their attacks and how best to tackle them. And they had a different style of, sinking them one from another. So that was quite cool. What do you guys think?
Well, it was a bit hard. I've only, I think, done one ship, and then said, fuck this, I'm out after the second two ones. So I have yet to officially defeat them, and it's on the to-do list. Dan.
I mean, the legendary ships are a cool idea, added an extra bit of difficulty in that, but I didn't really find, apart from the two, the pair of them that were together, I didn't really find that they stood out an incredible amount. The two that were paired together were just a real nuisance, and there was a fair bit of strategy, to them. The fact that when one died, the other one, went into a berserk mode and pretty much instantly killed you, made that really hard because you had to lower their health together and then kill them very quickly side by side. So that was very interesting. Is crazy seeing some of the glitches that people use where they couldn't do that fight naturally. So there was one where you get close to it and then you stop driving the ship and you stand on the up the front and you wait for your boat to slowly glide towards the two ships. Because you're not driving it, it doesn't initiate the combat, and it's a very slow glide towards them. And then they were able to use the main character, Edward, to climb the other ships, kill the crew because they weren't in combat, and when everyone was dead on the boat, it would actually trigger the death of those boats. I did actually play around with it. It wasn't the easiest glitch to do. I don't know if they patched it out or something like that, but it was very interesting.
From memory, when I started looking at the ships, I think that's not possible anymore. Because when I started the game and I thought, crap, I'm never ever gonna get these ships. Because as I said, when I first did the very first ship battles, I sucked so much. I figured there is no way I'm ever gonna get good enough. So I did start reading on, the legendary ships to understand how hard it would be. And I think they must have patched it out because a lot of people said, worst case scenario, you can, swim there. And apparently when the moment you touch them, like swim towards them, you die instantly.
Yeah, they probably patched all of that stuff out. But, I mean, at the end of the day, it wasn't the hardest thing. It did take me multiple attempts to get it. But, once you get the idea behind what you should be doing and then, an attempt or two just to get that right, it wasn't... Like, they were definitely legendary ships. They are harder than other ships, but it's not an impossible task.
The other thing that we didn't talk about was taking forts. So that's another mechanic in the game where you're around on your ship and you have to capture forts by, shooting at them. And then eventually they help you, defend the seas. I thought that was quite cool as well because that was a little bit different from, battling against other ships. So I thought that was quite cool. And then there was one fort where you also had this tornado coming around all the time. And I thought that was quite cool as well. So I felt like a lot of the sea mechanics and combat and the big waves and the tornadoes and all that sort of stuff that made what essentially, before you start teleporting to wherever you need to go, when you just want to do the fast travel, I felt like this, made the... being on your ship really interesting when you were doing it, when you really had to travel. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, and it was cool that outside of story missions, you could take a fort, and then when you actually did the story mission, if you were driving past it, then that would count towards it. So it was a cool little way of making some missions a bit easier. But again, it's just the variety. It's nice to have variety in the things that you can do, and forts is just another one of those examples.
Yeah, it was the same with the underwater wrecks, where I thought there were cool little stops of something different to do again. The first few that I did, I really hated it. I thought it was really, I don't know, it must be my claustrophobia and being underwater. I thought it was really, really stressful. And the sharks are just like... it's like, yeah, hide in the weeds. Yeah, dude, I'm in the weeds. Sometimes you have to get out of the weeds to swim somewhere and the sharks are like straight on you. But once I figured that I could just die and, restart as many times as I needed, and it, any chest that you were opening was already recorded and so on, that made it a little bit better. I didn't actually die as much as I expected I would, but it just helped make it a little bit less stressful.
Yeah, so that's be Assassin's Creed Black Flag. And this is from your captain now. I've taken control of this ship. Yar, me pirate man. And me first mate Dan and me cabin boy Delphine, or cabin girl. So, from the crew at the S.O.A.P ship, I bid yous all a farewell. And don't forget to check out Reddit or YouTube or Facebook and have a look and follow and subscribe. Share it with your friends or you'll be walking the plank. Yar!
You have been listening to the S.O.A.P podcast. Join us again soon for another episode, and don't forget to hit us up on all the social media platforms because we love hearing from you.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.